amazing people. So, oh, we've already got a hello there, which is great. So, yeah, so Stefanie will be our host, and take it away, Stefanie.
Yes, hello. Well, I'm going to start by introducing our panelists. Our first panelist, Katrina, please wave. I'm not going to be saying last names and middle names for, I don't want to embarrass myself. Katrina, and I'm reading just her intro, is an Afro-Asian Indigenous Latina and late diagnosed autistic with ADHD. She's a mother to a human, a feline, and a canine, as well as an artist, poet, creative, women in tech, interior designer, organizer enthusiast, and has a master's degree in library science to boot. So clearly she's not lazy. One of her missions is to create a more just, inclusive world through user experience research, design, and sharing her own story. If you want to talk to her, you can connect to her on TikTok. I'm not going to say it out, but we'll put links at the end so you can connect to everybody. Taylor, hi Taylor. Taylor's a mom of two and lives in Fort Worth, Texas. She spends her free time crocheting, expanding her musical instrument collection, and taking hip-hop classes. Taylor discovered her place on the spectrum as a 31-year-old, and since then has been dedicating her life to spreading awareness and acceptance through her YouTube channel, Mom on the Spectrum. And again, you can find her on TikTok and Instagram. And again, we'll put the links at the end so you can click on them at the end so you can visit their TikToks, YouTubes, and all their social medias. So today we'll be talking to two moms. Hello, moms. Who look wonderful for being moms, because I'm a mom and I have bags under my eyes. I don't know how you ladies do it. But we'll be talking about what it's like to be a mom. Hiding a camera, filters. We're talking to you all about what it's like being a mom, being autistic to your children, having autistic children, if you have autistic children. But I'm going to start with this. I want to know when you were both diagnosed. And I also want to know if you were diagnosed before you had children or after you had children. Do you want to start, Taylor?
Sure. I was diagnosed at 31, which was, what year is it? I think that was 2 years ago. So that was after I had children. My kids are 8. And my son just turned 6 2 days ago. So I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I was diagnosed way after I had kids. So was that all of your question?
Would it have been different for you? Do you think if you knew that you were autistic while you were pregnant and having children, it would change the experience?
Yeah, I think it would have helped me navigate it a lot better. I just think I've spent a lot of my life trying to find answers, like why I respond to situations in a certain way and why it feels so different for me than everybody else. So I think I definitely would have had more grace for myself and also been able to take more time to rest when I needed to rest, to process things, because I know I'm a delayed processor. So I definitely think it would have had huge ramifications if I would have known. I mean, any time at all, now looking back, it's like, I just wish I would have known earlier. It would have changed a lot. But
thank you. Katrina, same questions.
I would have to agree with Taylor in terms of the knowing part. I think that could have helped me a lot through my pregnancy because I didn't know until my son was a few months old. So I'd already gone through the full pregnancy, through the delivery, and I really think it could have helped me with my anxiety and a lot of other, physical and sensory things that I was struggling with.
You had mentioned in the delivery room you had some sensory concerns, like
yes,
you knew. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I mean, I like to prepare for a lot of different situations. I think with being autistic, that has just helped me kind of get through life. And so with being pregnant and going through delivery, I just had my list. I really contemplated, should I wear contacts or glasses? If I wear glasses, they could fog up while I'm delivering, while contacts, they might fall out and I won't be able to put one in. So it was just all of those little things that looking back now, I'm like, oh, I see why. Maybe that's not the typical experience for everyone, but for me, that was my my reality. And I wasn't diagnosed, and like I said, until after pretty much after my son was born. And it's actually because of him that I came to a diagnosis, I had this big fear in my head of like, what if he was autistic? And this is purely based off of my limited knowledge of what autism is. So I started to just, research into it because I wanted to make sure that I could communicate with my baby. Even though he was super young, that was just something that I was very, very, that was important to me. So yeah, through looking at all of the research and everything, it clicked like, maybe this is me. And sure enough, I went through the diagnosis process and I was right.
How old are all your children?
Oh, so my son Ellis, he's going to be 3 in September. So 2 right now, going to be 3.
Okay.
Yes.
And Taylor, how old are your children?
8 and 6. I have a daughter who's 8 and a son who just turned 6. Sorry, that was my
listen, we're going to get to that later. Have your children been diagnosed? Suspect them being autistic as well? And that's for either of you. Want to answer first?
I'll go. So I can relate to what Katrina was saying. Part of why I went down the road of learning that I was autistic is that my son, when he was very young, it was very different than my daughter. And I read everything I could to understand how to help him because everything triggered him. I mean, and still to this day, I mean, he's very sensitive. He's just very empathic and very prone to be aware of every single thing that's happening around him. And it overstimulates him, overwhelms him. So I read so much about it. I discovered that I really didn't understand what autism was because this term started coming up, as I'm trying to learn about what's going on with my son. And I started realizing that the understanding that I had of autism was actually really outdated and didn't really encapsulate the whole experience of autism and that it can actually present very differently. So for me, once I saw it, and I feel like other people that I've talked to have the same experience. Once you know, and you don't really need anybody else's approval. It's like, this fits me so perfectly that this is it. And I don't care what anybody else thinks. So I had that experience for me and I got diagnosed first. And then, this was all during, the past couple of years, which have been so wild for all of us during the pandemic and everything. But I can't remember how long it was after my diagnosis. I think a few months later, I had a really great experience with the psychologist who diagnosed me. I took both of my kids back to her. And my son received an autism diagnosis. I don't know if we want to talk about levels right now. I'm not sure how I feel about levels of autism.
You can talk how you want
to. He was diagnosed as level 1 autism, which some people would consider higher functioning. I don't like that term really because I think it just shows that people have to mask harder to be okay. Definitely, there's different struggles between the levels of autism, but I don't think that level 1 necessarily means you're less autistic. Anyways, we can cover that later. My daughter met all the criteria except socially, which was frustrating because even in her answers when I was with her, I knew she was masking. Like she would answer things, like one of the questions was, how do you feel when friends come over to your house? And she said, oh, I love my friends. I love having friends over at my house, which is true. But before she has friends over, she hides all of her toys that she doesn't want people to touch, not to be mean, but because her personal space is very important to her. When friends are over at the house, she has to take breaks in my closet and sit and breathe by herself when people are over. So there's all these things that she already is doing to compensate for like social overwhelm, where I really feel like she meets the criteria there socially. And my psychologist had told me, I feel like in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, come back and let's reevaluate her because these social behaviors will start becoming more apparent as they get older and they're having more social complexities. So as a very long answer to your question, my son is diagnosed. My daughter met all the criteria except the social criteria. So she doesn't have an official diagnosis yet.
Do you think it'll be more of a struggle to have her diagnosed? Because, you always hear about girls being diagnosed later because they show autism differently than males.
Yeah.
So
I think that's already happened, in hindsight and what I recommend to other people. In hindsight, I would have so the DSM-5 is the diagnostic criteria that people most commonly use to diagnose autism. Now in hindsight, I would have gone through bit by bit and provided evidence of how she met each of those criteria, because she does, but it's very hard, like you said, for some girls to meet the criteria because the testing doesn't always encapsulate their experience. So yes, she's already experienced that of it being harder to diagnose her, and I know that that's a very widespread problem. But I do feel a lot of confidence and trust in the psychologist that I have, and I think my relationship with her, I can communicate well enough now that I understand my daughter's experiences. I think that next time we decide to revisit this, whenever that's going to be, I have trust that there are providers who definitely do understand and hear and want to help get that diagnosis, because it definitely changes a lot when someone has that diagnosis and really needs it.
And Katrina, I know your little one's tiny, but do you see any sort of diagnosis in the future?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I feel like I live in a very neurodivergent household, so to me, it's just us being us. But I do try to keep an eye out for certain signs that might indicate that, especially if he's struggling, with anything. But yeah, that'll be a conversation that my husband and I will definitely, start to have as he's getting older, to see, if we feel like we need to look into that further. But yeah, it's kind of one of those things. I just feel like he's too young right now for me to really know.
Yeah. I want to talk a little about school. I want to talk about daycare, even like play dates, obstacles you might have with your child and the teachers and peers. Do you want to start, Katrina?
Sure. Yeah. So my son is in daycare for 5 days a week. I work full time. My husband works full time, and I have the duty of drop off and pick up most days. And I have to say, it's easy for me to be around him and his classmates, but it's a little bit harder for me to be around the adults, the teachers, the other parents. I mean, I feel like I've kind of figured out, okay, it works for me if I'm here for a short amount of time, and if I really focus on my son, and then if I need to speak with the teacher, I really need to check in with myself to see if I'm really overwhelmed, because otherwise I'll just forget everything and not accomplish what's needed. So it is interesting to have to navigate, these situations around not only children, but also other adults. I have to say too, with play dates and stuff like that, especially when I was a brand new mom, it was just one of those things that I was constantly overthinking. Did I say the right thing? Did I say the wrong thing? Just really checking on myself to see if basically the masking was just really intensive during that time. But now that I think, I'm a little bit more settled in role, I am more confident in my parenting. So it's just about for me to really check in with myself to see, okay, is this something that I can continue handling? If not, I'll ask my husband, hey, can you come switch with me? And we kind of, tag team in that way.
Okay, Taylor, same question. School, obstacles, play dates.
Yeah, this is another one that I could talk forever about, but two things are coming to mind immediately. So first of all, for myself, I'm learning a lot more how to accommodate, to make accommodations for myself. When there's events at school, I always I have earplugs that I like to wear. I intentionally dress very comfortably because I've noticed I just feel very claustrophobic if I don't. Like, this would be too much to wear to school. If they had a party or something, I'd wear a t-shirt and jeans and tennis shoes. I've given myself permission to not feel that pressure of like interacting with other parents when I'm there, because I always feel like, oh, I need to say something, or I need to be I need to be kind. So I'll smile at other people, but I just kind of give myself permission to hang back and make it all about, my kids when I'm there. If someone tries to talk to me, then I'm not going to shun them or anything, but it's kind of just setting my expectations beforehand of like, it's okay not to be as engaging as, other people are. But secondly, this is an issue that is really upsetting to me that we have to make progress in. So in my kids' school, we live in Texas, and there's a process you have to go through in order to get accommodations at school. And the testing that you go through, so we say, hey, our son's autistic, he's going to need some extra support at school. So then that begins a testing process. The testing process is completely different than what he went through for his psychological evaluation. And after the testing process at school, they said, great news, isn't it wonderful? He doesn't meet the criteria for autism. And I said, no, this isn't wonderful.
Right.
Autism is not something to be ashamed of or mad about. He has a professional psychological evaluation. He might not seem autistic to you. It might be a different brand of autism, but this is a legitimate diagnosis that has not been confirmed in his school setting where he is every single day. And because of that, he's not able to get occupational therapy, which he desperately needs because of his coordination and other issues. He is able to get very limited speech therapy because he doesn't qualify for more. So as a mom, that's something that, I had this room full of people who are like, isn't it great he doesn't meet the criteria? And then at that point, it's on me to advocate and be like, no, it's not. But there's nothing I can do because on an educational and government standpoint, like he cannot qualify for those services unless he tests with their testing material on the autism spectrum. It's just a mess. It's really
Is that through the IEP? Are you trying to get IEP? Okay. Yep. I've heard the same thing. And I think my younger brother, way back when we were in elementary school, they had to go through that process and it was just so difficult. It's nice to hear though, I think, especially with my son being so young, to hear how you have to advocate for your kid. I mean, I think as parents, we know that, but to learn from another mom who's also autistic, the way in which you did it is really helpful to see.
I think being part of like your local moms groups has been very helpful to people that I've also seen. Are you part of the local moms groups yet?
You want to go, Katrina?
Do you mean just like in your location, your area?
Social media. A lot of times, like on social media, they'll have like your town moms groups, and for the most part, they're very supportive. Like, I do have support in there, or
I haven't explored that personally. We just moved to Washington State, so we live near Seattle. So I'm still getting used to my area, but that's not a bad idea. I do feel like though, when I join groups like that, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, especially being autistic and having ADHD. It's just not everyone can fully understand the experience, which is okay. I mean, that's fine, but I can also see how that could be helpful,
Yeah.
For me, there is a group in my area of autistic parents. I haven't gotten super involved in that because I spend a lot of time in my own personal online community with Mom on the Spectrum. I think that's why social media is so great. It doesn't necessarily matter to me like where you are. And I've just been blown away by the autistic community. It's one of the most, like, I feel emotional talking about it. It's one of the most accepting, like, kind communities I've ever seen. I feel so emotional. It's just like people don't judge you. They don't say you're not autistic enough. And I mean, we're talking online here, like where people rip each other apart. And the community that I've seen within the autistic community is just, it's something like I haven't experienced before. It's been extremely helpful because they'll write something or share something where I'm like, I had no idea I was experiencing that same thing, but you just put it into words, and like, that's my experience too. So it's been a really cool way to learn more about myself and interact with other people that have similar experiences.
When you meet parents, when you're out with your children, do you find yourself masking? And we can start with you, Taylor.
Yeah, I think masking is going to be a lifelong process, learning how to unmask. So, for anyone unsure of this term, masking is kind of what we do to fit in socially. We may or may not realize that we're doing it, you know, just like me talking about being at the class parties at school, trying to make myself talk to other people when that feels nightmarish, you know, trying to look cute when that's not what I want to do. Like, I just want to be frumpy, you know, all these kinds of things that we do to accommodate how we feel we should show up in society. So yeah, I mask all the time, especially when meeting like a new parent or having a play date. It's really hard not to mask. And I think that's part of the reason I wanted to just rip the Band-Aid off and tell the world that I'm autistic, you know, by making my channel. Cause I'm like, this is who I am. It helps to have that precursor where people, you know, I just feel like it gives me a cushion of, okay, I might be a little bit different. I might not be talking or looking in your direction or whatever, but I have found that being really open about my diagnosis, which is not for everyone, that it has helped me mask less, because I feel like it kind of sets a precedent for what people are thinking about.
Yeah, I just have to step in and say the disclosure can be really helpful for those of us who I think maybe mask too well, so that people don't believe us. And we just, I don't know for you, Taylor, but for me, it was like as soon as I could tell people I was autistic, they got to stop thinking I was just being rude or weird and have an explanation for maybe some of the behaviors that didn't make sense to them previously.
Well, even as an holistic person, I work in a library. I speak to children all day. And it's very often that I've had parents say to their kids, look at her in her eye, look at her in her eye. And I've learned to say, no, they're fine. They don't have to look at me to talk to me. You know, they, you know, just if they're comfortable looking away, you know, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Stefanie, can you remind me of your original question?
Where was it? Oh, we're talking a little bit about masking. And do you mask? Would you feel you mask when you're around, like maybe your parental peers or just in general? And then I want to step into stimming after that, because I feel like that goes hand in hand. So let's jump into that right after that question.
Okay. So for me, yes, I still mask a lot. I try not to, but I think also as a person of color, that protects me in a lot of ways. The reality is that me as a person of color, I do get looked at differently. I wish it wasn't that way, but that's the way it is. So for the sake of myself and for the sake of my son, sometimes I do have to mask to show that I'm capable of being a mom and a good mom and not an abusive mom. So, you know, it's a hard balance for me, I'm going to admit. I think Taylor was right in saying that, you know, it's kind of a lifelong thing because of the society that we live in general. But I still feel that I am true to myself. It's just more of a protection thing sometimes for me that I have to be extra aware of. And I'm okay with that, especially because, I want to be with my children. I want to be with my family. And, you know, I can still be myself, even though I have to do that sometimes.
You said something interesting, like people maybe having stigma about maybe an autistic parent not being a good parent. Do either of you have something to say about? Do you have something? I don't know who has what to say. I jumped. That's a surprise question. So
no, I just cut out for me, so I didn't hear the end of your question.
I was saying that Katrina had said something interesting about how parents might look. Oh, they might think I'm a bad parent. Do you have this worry that there are people that might say, oh, she's autistic, maybe she's not going to be a very good parent, maybe she shouldn't be parenting children, or people saying things, just bad mouthing in like an holistic world?
For me, I mean, whenever I explain that I'm autistic to the people that I trust or when I feel like it's needed, I don't feel that that's a factor in my parenting. I think a lot of the times people are surprised and they just don't understand that when you know one autistic person, you know one autistic person. So that we're all different. So yeah, for me, I personally haven't received any sort of negativity towards me being autistic and a mom. If anything, it feels it feels as if I'm rewarded in a way, I guess, for handling everything. But yeah, that's just me. So
What do you say, Taylor?
I have not received any outward, overt negative criticisms like that. I think I feel it internally sometimes, and it may or may not be justified or real. But, one thing that I like to do, other than just being completely blunt and obvious about the fact that I'm autistic, I have car magnets that I have on my car that say, like mom on the spectrum. And part of it is I like making people think about it. Like there's a mom driving a car, and a lot of people might think like an autistic person shouldn't drive or have kids or be by themselves out in the city. That's just unfortunately where we're at with autism right now in the world, is that there's such a misunderstanding of it. So I almost kind of, I don't know, I kind of like to play with that a little bit and just be like, look at me, like I'm an autistic person. What do you think about that? So I try to challenge those stereotypes and try to make people think about it.
Very cool. So let's take a step back. Let's talk about stimming a little bit. So you stim? I say yes. So what does that do for you? Tell everybody what stimming does for you. How you deal with it when you're in public and you might feel like you need to.
It's a big question. You want to go, Katrina, or you want me to start?
Oh, you can start. Go ahead.
Forget about that one.
So for me, stimming is something, not just autistic people stim, but it's definitely more prevalent within the autistic community. And it's a coping strategy for dealing with a lot of internal stress and sensory overwhelm, sensory overload. I dealt with this when I was younger, before I knew that stimming was a thing, by biting my nails constantly, twirling my hair, drumming on everything. A lot of times women and young girls have covert stims. They go beneath the surface and do things repetitively that other people can't notice so that they don't get called out for it. So in school, I was always, I tap my toes all the time. I'm always constantly moving. People would probably be surprised to know that about me, but I'm just always constantly moving. I think that I used dance as a stim when I was younger, and I still do that. That helps me get energy out. But yeah, I definitely am learning more of the importance of it as I get older. I've done a lot of therapy, and I was really lucky to find a great psychologist who understands adult autism, and they'll always remind me in times of stress, hey, don't forget to stim. Like, don't underestimate the value of stimming, because it really does move stress out of the body. So for me, like very big, like physical stims, like kind of stereotypical stims really are helpful for me, but I still mask my way out of them because I'm not comfortable enough doing them in public. But when I'm alone in my car, I'll do this. I'll like dance really hard to music in my car. When I'm alone at home, I'll jump up on my tiptoes and like bounce my whole body. And when I do that, I'm still learning. I'm very surprised at how much it helps me regulate all of the stress inside my body.
Yeah, that's so funny. We share a lot of stims, Taylor. For me, I would say yes to all of that. It helps me regulate so much. I also have ADHD too, so I can totally understand, especially that feeling of movement or always doing something to help me regulate. Recently, I just got back to hand sewing and sewing with a machine, just because that repetitive sort of motion has been really helpful for me to calm down, when I have a work break or something like that. Something that I didn't realize was stimming that surprised me, but has always comforted me, is like rubbing my feet together, especially in bed. Like, it just feels so good to me. And I'm always surprised to hear that other people, that's also a comfort to them and helps them regulate. So when I'm out in public, oftentimes I just find that, I just need to move. So I'll just make sure to walk, if that's a faster pace or a slower pace, it is what it is. I also bring some of my fidgeters with me too, especially if I'm like having to wait in a line in the grocery store. Like, I just always have these things on me. And if I don't, then I might find something in the store that'll help me. So, I feel like, as a mom, you have to definitely work with what you have sometimes. And so that's how I've kind of gotten through. But then there are also those days where, maybe that's not enough. So I have to, really check in with myself and see what I need, whether that's, okay, you're just going to like lie down under your weighted blanket and be still with the window open and stare out the window. And that works just as well. So, yeah.
So before I move on to the next topic, I just want to tell our audience, if you have any questions, just type them in the box. We'll be answering questions within and at the end. But next thing I want to talk about is a big question. This is for Katrina. Let's talk about the stigma of being autistic and a person of color. Tell me about family life. Tell me about social culture, your community.
Yeah, like you said, that's a very big and loaded question.
It's going to take a while.
Yeah, so I just want to preface this by saying this is my experience and not the experience of all BIPOC autistics. So,
and just to clarify, we want to have lots of BIPOC autistics on. We don't want you to be, nobody can speak for an entire community or
Right.
group of communities, right? So this is your experience, but it obviously has an impact.
Yes. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself. So as we mentioned in the beginning, I'm an Afro-Asian Indigenous Latina. So I come from a very diverse background of cultures and of people, a lot of resilient individuals that have taught me so much and have really helped me become the person that I am, to become the parent that I am. But also with that comes a lot of trauma and a lot of historical trauma that's just, there for us to deal with pretty much. So I feel like a lot, being intersectional is just hard. It's just a hard thing. And then to add on being autistic was challenging, not only for people that knew me, but especially some of my family members, because based off of our lives, we have to do more than others to get by. So by being deemed as autistic, that's kind of seen as a notch against me and who I am and how I present myself and by extension my family to the world. And this isn't my immediate family at all. This is more so some other family members and so forth. But overall, I can say that I feel like I do have the support that I need. I think initially when I was going through the diagnosis process, there was a lot of gaslighting. There was a lot of disbelief in terms of like, you go to school, you have a master's, you're all of these amazing things, but you can't be autistic, because that in a way can be shameful, and it was very hurtful at the time, but I'm very glad that not only have I gone through it, but they've accepted me as I am. Now I think it's time for the rest of the world to catch up, I guess. Because, being a person of color and, there's just so much stigma behind ability and how you move through the world. I think someone wrote an article, I think her name is Katrina Naoko, and she talks about being autistic and Black and the stigmas that she has had to encounter and break down as being a Black autistic woman. And that totally resonated with me, because it's just it's different, I would say, than many other people experience. Some stigmas that I've encountered is like, oh, then you're lazy if you need to rest, or if I'm trying to set a boundary, I'm being too assertive or too aggressive in the way that I'm doing it. And a lot of this stems from, being a person of color and how I'm perceived in that way. So, yeah, I know I just rambled on. That was a lot to take in.
A whole other event about this, so and maybe we will. So Kate, I actually want to let you go through. I was scroll through the comments a little bit. A lot of interesting things people were saying. If you wanted to kind of highlight some questions in there, and I'll let you go for a while. I'll sit back and drink my coffee.
Okay.
Yeah, go through question, go through highlights. Some people said some really interesting things.
So one of the ones here that I'm going to bring up is, as a teacher, I had students whom I suspected brought up with appropriate people at school, but were refused testing because the academics were good. I could see the students needed more, but I was denied. It was denied. And I look at both of you too, and I see that you're kind of, I think in my category, you were successful by some external factors. So, you have a master's degree. Taylor, I think, did you say you were homecoming queen?
I was, yeah.
You don't think, I sang in operas, there were this, you can't do this and be autistic. And that's all just completely not true. And I think it's more damaging than people realize. So does anyone have anything to say about that? What would you say to an educator who is trying to deal with that people are denied because their academics are good, because they have achievements?
Get educated. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think I would definitely try to help them understand, all of these things that we're fighting against, which is this idea of autism is just one thing. So whether that's, sharing resources with them, and I have to admit, especially, just in terms of my schooling, it's been hard to help others see that. I don't know if it's just because of the states that I've lived in or what, but it is difficult. So I empathize with the person that was denied what they needed.
Yeah.
And I would say, I think teachers, we expect too much of them. There's one teacher and there's 20 to 30 students in a classroom, and we all have our own unique learning challenges, regardless of whether or not we're on the spectrum, and teachers can't take care of everyone's needs. So I would say trust your instincts. If something seems like it's too hard for someone and they're struggling, even if you can't do something on a large scale of getting them, testing or whatever, just acknowledging their struggle and letting them know that they're not making it up. You can say, oh, this seems like this is hard for you. Are you struggling with this? Can I explain this a different way? Do we need to do a different assignment for you? But really just acknowledging, calling out what you see and trying to empathize with them, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and letting them know that they're not making it up in their head. Teachers have an awesome intuition in general. And so I think just continue to trust that and know that the students, a lot of times who are super successful, a lot of times that's a coping strategy and a coping mechanism to go unnoticed, to just go with the flow so that things stay the way that they are. And those coping strategies have very significant impacts in terms of health in many ways, because they're stress related. They cause more anxiety by trying to do things that feel uncomfortable and not as safe or fitting with their needs. So I would just say trust your gut and know that anything you can do to help bring awareness to their struggles can really help the child feel validated and seen.
That's such a good point, Taylor, because it brings me to our next comment, the not autistic enough, because I think that's for on the higher functioning end, which, like you, I hate those labels, right? They're damaging. They erase the needs of higher functioning autistics while kind of erasing the ability to have autonomy of the lower functioning. But this idea that, teachers, maybe you don't need to have a diagnosis, but you can still make the accommodations you can make for a child that's struggling, because those struggles are there, whether or not we're calling that child autistic.
Yeah, definitely.
And even if they're doing a really great job and, having on paper all these big accomplishments, you can't be autistic because, and so many things that we rule things out. Even I think knowing ourselves helps, because it's, for me at least, it was internalized. I didn't think I could be autistic because I had read that autistic people didn't feel certain ways. And that's why we're having these events, so you can hear from people who are actually autistic, and we're hearing what autism feels like rather than what it looks like. I went on a tangent there, and I think we've lost Stefanie. So
No, I'm here. I just shut down a little bit so you guys can
oh, okay. I can
talk
remove you
about
from the
me,
stream
you know.
formally. It's no worries. All right.
If I can say something too about Taylor's comment that I loved so much, for me, a lot of the times I get overwhelmed by the idea of the system and the system not working for the people. And I think that's how my attitude was when I first answered the question. But Taylor, I just loved how you focused on what could be done to help in the now, because that is, of course, super important, right? And you're right. There's so many other things and so many other accommodations that can be made that that can help that particular student. So I just wanted to say thanks for sharing that, because that totally gave me a more positive perspective on that situation.
I think that, with labels, they can be incredibly helpful. I'm eternally grateful that I have the label of autistic to help me understand myself. They can connect us to resources, support other people like us. But at the end of the day, the main point has to be connecting to the person behind the label. And so many times we're unable to get that label for whatever reason. Maybe the parents don't agree. Maybe the testing isn't there. The system isn't supporting the label, whatever. But what are the needs of that individual person? It does, like I think Kate was saying, it doesn't matter what you call it. If you can get the label and that's helpful to you, awesome. But if not, how can we meet each person on their own level according to their own needs?
And a great question has just come up, if you don't mind. This one is about the appropriate verbiage when using ability or function levels. And I think that's a complicated one. I think we probably I have a feeling we're all in alignment on it, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say.
I mean, it seems like you both have been really waiting to talk about this, so I'll let you take the floor.
Oh, Taylor, do you want to take this one?
Sure. I mean, I think this is another thing where I get to interact with a lot of different people on the spectrum as part of my job, but everyone has different preferences. And I personally like saying that I am autistic rather than a person with autism, because it's not an extra thing. Like, it's all inclusive. Like, it's one and the same. I'm an autistic person. I don't have autism, I just would prefer it to be autistic. And that's what I have found most in the autistic community, but it's not 100% true across the board. Some people don't, they feel differently. Same thing with functioning levels. I've had, my brain's going down a rabbit hole here. There's people on the spectrum who have put so much thought into different terms that we could use. And I really wish I could point you to some of the novels that have been written to me about different options that we could use. But I think for me, at the end of the day, I try to steer away from the levels of functioning and focus more on the individual needs of the person. And I tend to see that helps people find accommodations and feel more seen than focusing on any type of label does.
Yeah. And I know, like, people want to describe us, they want to divide us into sort of quadrants of autism, but I wish, I guess personally, that people could see that the same person, if you look at them at a different moment within a single day, you might identify them differently. Like, I don't know if you feel like if they saw you in your car freely stimming, they'd probably say you looked way more autistic than you do, at a PTA meeting or on YouTube, where, you're so thoughtful about everything that it's hard to realize. But I think that a lot of what we have to do is just unpack this idea that autism is bad, because I think a lot of people want to separate themselves from autism if they feel a stigma. But I think all three of us here have come to a place where we're proud to be autistic. It's like it's integral. You can't like, if you took away my autism, I'd be a different person. So it's not like an outside thing. It's like kind of, I think of it as like my subspecies of human. Yeah. We got another comment there. Spoiler, it's my sister. But she said, there is no me without autism. And that's the thing. I was like, if you cured my autism, I would cease to exist. That's how I see it. And that's totally a tangent. So sorry. What am I looking for?
There was another one in there, a long question. Where was that?
Oh,
Where-
loud verbal stims. It was a comment specifically about
yes, I like
stims,
that
which
one.
I think is great. Yeah.
Yes. So my son, just in general, is a very energetic, boisterous person. And so we do talk a lot about volume in our house because it can trigger me a lot. And not just because of autism, but because of trauma as well. So yeah, we do fun games surrounding volume levels, and we talk about notches, like okay, you're at this notch, but let's get down to this notch. And sometimes I just have to put on my noise canceling earphones and regulate myself in that way. And I have to admit, I mean, sometimes it's just overwhelming and too much. And I try my best to not raise my voice, at my kid, but it inevitably, like every parent, it happens. So yeah, it's to me, it's just a balancing act. I also have to respect his voice sometimes and allow him to be able to be as loud as he wants. And that just means like, okay, you get to do that. I'm going to put these on so you can enjoy, that time and express yourself. And then, but sometimes we have to also be mindful of each other in other ways. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with the headphones. I've got like a letter organizer on the wall, and there's hooks, and there's my headphones, my daughter's headphones, my son's headphones. And something that has helped us is we talk about common spaces. And one of the ways that my son stims is with echolalia, which is the repetition of sounds, words, phrases. And when he's really stressed or anxious or trying to work through something, he'll hear a word and just say it over and over and over again, which, if you can imagine, his sister does not like very much. So, it'll get to a point, where Molly will be like, Cooper! And I'll say, all right, bud, it's totally fine. If you want to keep doing that, you can do it in your room. You can do it outside. And I try to help him move to a different location. It doesn't always work like that. And it's not perfect. And we're still learning. It's really hard in the car after school because they both need to stim. They both need to talk to me. They both need to process. They both need to come down from all the overstimulation. And so I always try to have the headphones in the car. It doesn't normally work out. I always forget them. But yeah, we just kind of, like you said, we try to talk about respecting each other's surroundings, and it doesn't always work out, but we try.
One thing I'm noticing too is everybody's bringing up so much technology. Like there's so many things that we use to make our autism easier to manage that didn't even exist 5 or 10 years ago. Now we all have weighted blankets and noise technology. It's really like those things are basically essentials with autism, I think.
I think even the Autistic community is learning, and they want to be more supportive of the autistic community, and it's wonderful. Because I think there are still people that are terrible. That you hear school districts, like by me, there's one school district that's very depressing, that doesn't want to face children with any sort of disabilities and children that are autistic. They just want to push them out. But for the most part, I think I'm seeing more support.
Oh, we got a good question. My sister again. Is it echolalia to tell the same stories repeatedly? That is something I have both done and experienced with others.
Katrina, do you have thoughts on that? I see you nodding your head over there.
I to be honest, I haven't looked into echolalia too much, but I know that I do that. So yes, and the same thing with repeating words as well. If sometimes it just feels right to say it, and sometimes I don't even realize that I'm doing it. It's just happening, and in a way I'm stimming. So That's my only comment. with that.
I don't know technically if telling stories repeatedly is echolalia. I don't know, but like you said, Katrina, I do this, and many people on the spectrum do this. For me, I'm wondering if maybe this is more related to special interests, because if you get an autistic person going on their special interest, they're going to tell you a story. They're not going to stop. They're going to keep going until they're sure that you know everything they're talking about, and you might hear that story every time you see them. So that's kind of what it's bringing up with me, is maybe that could be related to a special interest. I'm not sure.
I think this is a good one too. Just how everything is louder and more stimulating with technology. We're surrounded by it. So it is harder for us to get that silence and that quiet that we need. So, or the calming, certain things about modern life, I think, do require us to come up with alternative ways.
If anything could be invented to help you, what would it be? Or your children? That's a hard one.
Well, for me, a system of testing and support that is consistent and dependable. I mean, that's what I'm all about, and that's why I'm trying to talk more about this. And we have to create some way to test and support these kids who are needing the support. So if I could invent anything, it would be, especially for girls, to get a test and diagnostic process out there that can support girls who go undiagnosed for too long.
Yeah, I mean, how can I say anything different? I guess actually this. Okay, so Taylor, you have that one. I will tack on the funding available to, anyone who needs it to get the access that they need.
Yeah.
And I would add, as a childless autistic adult who plans to stay that way, that we need to also catch, because a lot of parents find their own autism with their children's diagnosis, but we miss, the percentage of undiagnosed autistic adults is really high, or all three of us wouldn't have been diagnosed over 30. So, I think that adults need supports as well. Obviously, children are super important. And, my day job as a children's librarian, it's all about raising children who don't have the trauma that adults already have, raising children up in that way. But there's a lot of adults who just don't know why they're struggling. And I think we're missing so much too, because I don't know about how you two feel, but I see, Taylor, your channel is amazing. I thought of myself as someone who knew what I was talking about, and I'm still learning new words from you, or even just learning ways to communicate the words I already know. Oh, right, most people don't know this word. I need to use a definition every time I say it.
Yeah, whenever I say holistic, now I'm starting to learn. Last night I went out, people didn't know what it meant, and I'm like, well,
yeah, people don't know.
Don't think about it.
And it's not good communication if other people don't know what I'm talking about. So, but I feel like all of us, our gifts really were able to come forward once we understood who we were. And that self-understanding is important.
What would you tell the holistic community? If you could tell the holistic community anything to support you and your children, what would you tell them? What would you ask for?
I would say, don't label me. If you really want to understand me, just listen. Ask questions, just listen. I think I just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a couple of practical questions. Has anybody tried specifically the calmer earplugs, or is everybody using an electric? Yeah, how?
To come out.
I may.
That comes out.
I partner with Calmer.
Oh, awesome.
The Calmer earbud. I was not planning this at all. This just happened to be by my desk. The Calmer earbuds.
Sponsored by.
I don't like them in my ears. The Calmer earbuds are open at the bottom, so they don't drown out sound. So they basically filter out the highs and the lows of sound frequencies. So you're still hearing the people talking to you, but you don't hear yourself chew, and you don't hear a muffled voice talking when you're talking to other people.
I have a teenager wear them at my programs. I wears them, and so we hear the movies, but he wears them.
Yeah, I wear mine at the movies. I wear mine at the restaurant. It's very subtle, but when I take them out, I'm like, oh nope, I got to put them back in. They help so much. So yes, I can 100% vouch for them. I love them.
My sister's saying she'd love an Auti to neurotypical translator that works both ways. And that is Stefanie. If you came everywhere with me, I would do so well socially.
Oh, I swear, I'm gonna come to Canada. I'm gonna stay with you, and you have to come here. We all want to meet.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we've got a question about connective tissue disorders. Do either of you have connective tissue disorders that you know of?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I don't, but there's many people. This is a very frequent co-occurrence with autism, and there's many people that I've heard that deal with this as well. How do you say it? Ehlers-Danlos syndrome?
Yeah, I just say EDS.
Okay.
And I have a related disorder, osteogenesis imperfecta, which works very similarly to EDS. And I was diagnosed with that at birth. So I think actually some of my autistic symptoms were written off as being related to that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a nice one too. Assume competence. Yeah, I think we do have people like, do you notice, have either of you had that experience where you disclose your autism and suddenly people talk to you like you're 4 years old?
I thankfully have not had that experience.
Okay. It's mostly happened to me in writing where somebody will be like, oh, I don't know if I should. Anyway, but yeah, these are all great. Okay, great questions. Oh, toddlers are loud. I try earplugs, but it's also, yeah, the question about the earplugs was, you know, something where she can still meet her children's needs, obviously, right? Like, so those calmer ones, they look really cool. I know this isn't a sponsored video.
I promise. This coincidence.
But I mean, it's really helpful. And as we kind of get to the end here, if we're going to promote something else, Taylor has something I'm so excited. I haven't even had as much opportunity to explore as I'd like. Your big resource guide there.
Yes. So I recently just published something called the BARG. That's what we call it on the channel, the Big Autistic Resource Guide. Right now, it is up to 38 pages long. My goal is for it to be the autistic phone book where you need any service and you can open it and you can support someone in the community by going through their business, or you can connect to someone who's in a similar situation. You can find reputable providers who understand how to diagnose autism in adults. It's completely free to download. It's donation-based. That's on my website, momonthespectrum.life. And I'm super excited about it. You can also, if you have something that you want featured in it, it's free to be featured in it. And you can send that to submissions at momonthespectrum.life. And I try to update that regularly so that that guide is continually growing and can be something that serves the autistic community.
Awesome.
Cool. Do you have any other resources you just want to promote in general? Like any resources that you think would be, either of you, Katrina or Taylor, any resources that that you feel that people that in this group might find helpful?
Sure. Well, first I'd like to plug, I'm in the closing stages of writing a chapbook about my experience as an autistic and being a person of color. And I mean, and I don't think I mentioned this before, but it's been about a year into my diagnosis. So I feel like this chapbook has really helped me understand what autism is, and also helped me reflect back on all of the early signs that I wasn't aware of. So I'm really hoping that through this chapbook, it can help others, especially those who are people of color and autistic, to know that they're not alone and maybe help them just feel seen. In terms of resources, I mean, aside from Taylor's channel, of course, I find podcasts really, really helpful for me, especially while I'm doing pickup and drop off of stuff. I can just listen to an episode. Some of my favorite podcasters I just find through Spotify, and I'm sorry, I don't have a list with me, but I can maybe put it in the chat so that way we could list it later.
Yeah, and I was gonna say anything we mention, I should do up a blog post for our website,
Mhm.
Stefanie. So we run a website together, storytimesolidarity.com. And it's mostly been geared towards children's librarians and resources for them. But we were getting so many requests for other types of solidarity, especially with the autism community, that we just added a solidarity for grownups tab. So I will make sure to link to Katrina's and Taylor's blog, which sounds amazing, and I'm really excited about.
I'll make sure I put it on the Storytime Library for the Kind Facebook. And I also, as a librarian, it's important for me and Kate to say that read books written by autistic authors.
Exactly. So Katrina's book would be an excellent choice of a book written by an autistic author, because it's so easy in fiction for like, I read a lot of books with autistic characters. I read a lot of fiction before diagnosis, and it never occurred to me based on them that I might be autistic. But if I had read something like Katrina's book, I might have said, well, that seems awfully familiar. Oh, thank you everyone so much. I think we're out of time. There's more questions. There's more questions. We'll try to deal with those later. I'll respond to everything I can, but thank you everyone. Thank you, Taylor and Katrina and Stefanie. This is an amazing event. And
have an amazing day, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone. And feel free to reach out. And if anyone's seeing this and saying, I have stuff to say, I want to be on one of these, feel free to reach out to me personally and we'll set something up. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.